Hello, everybody. I apologize for not being able to do this in person live. But let's learn some Torah and let's get some understanding of the Parsha of Vayikrah. So the Parsha of Vayikrah is a very difficult Parsha. It begins the Sefer of Vayikrah, which doesn't have that many narratives in it. And it's very much more focused on the technical, legal side of Torah, of the Korbanot, and then it goes into different other aspects of technical halakha, Parshat Kadoshim. There are some very technical things. So therefore, the actual Sefer is going to be a much more complicated one, and we have to find lessons to learn within the technicalities of the mitzvot, which is really a beautiful thing, because what it allows us to do is it allows us to really take something complicated and bring it into our real lives so we can really understand it. What I'd like to do today is expand on a shiur I gave this morning on the Korban Minchah. And so what we like to do is just to go through a few aspects of the Korban Minchah and then try and unpack them a little bit more. In order to do that, what I'm going to do is I am going to share my screen so that we can see the words on the screen. And once we can see the words on the screen itself, then we can start looking at what the Torah is telling us. So here we have Vayikrah, Perek Bet, the second Perek of Vayikrah, and it says the following: V'nefesh ki takriv korban mincha la'Hashem. V'nefesh, a person generally an understanding is a nefesh, a person ki takriv korban mincha la'Hashem, who's bringing a korban mincha to Hashem. Solet yeh korbano. His korban should be made out of solet, out of flour. Vayatzak aleh hashemen, and you must put shemen onto it. Shemen is some type of oil, olive oil in this case. V'natan aleh levona, and you put onto it levona. Levona is frankincense. The commentaries on this explain the following. Rashi says, and Rashi is your just to try and understand the basic words. Rashi says v'nefesh. What does it mean, v'nefesh? So he says, lo ne'emar nefesh b'chol ha-korbanot, that it doesn't say nefesh with all the korbanot nadava. Nadava means a free offering. I'm bringing this offering on my own desire. It's a gift offering. The only time it speaks about this on all the different korbanot, because just above this, it's spoken about the korbanot, that are the animals, and all the different types of animals, but it never uses the word v'nefesh. It speaks about Adam. Adam ki yakriv mikem. That's talking about a human being. But here it speaks about the in this Korban Mincha, which we need to understand, it brings the word, it uses the word nefesh. Mi dar kolis nadev mincha. So ask Rashi, so who's the person that would bring a mincha? Why would you not bring an animal? We know that the animal is representative of our lifeblood. The animal, when it gets cut up and into all the different parts and everything, that's representative of me. I'm supposed to be on that mizbeach. When my closeness means that I've got to come as close as I can be in order for me to be presented before HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the most profound and even vulnerable way. So who would bring a korban mincha? Who would bring an offering of flour? An ani, a poor person. So in that case, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says, Ma'aleh ani alav ki ilu yikrif nafsho. I'm going to consider it, says Hashem, as if this ani, this poor person, as if he brought his nefesh, as if he brought his very essence and his soul. Why? Because that's all he can bring. And so if that's all he can bring, then I will bring it. Things. What does solet mean? What does solet mean? Solet is ein solet ela mina chitin. Solet comes from chitin, from wheat. So we start already, we understand that that we bring a korban out of wheat flour that is going to be, that represents the person's soul. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's the most simple food that we have. In fact, it's a staple food that we have. V'yatzak aleh shemen, and you put oil onto it. So says Rashi, al kula, on the whole thing. V'natan aleh levoina, and you also put this frankincense, al miktzat, says Rashi, on just a little bit. That all you do is you take levona, you take a small amount of levona and you put it on the side. And you leave it like that. And so therefore what we've got a lot of wheat mixed with a lot of flour mixed with shemen, mixed with oil, and a little bit of this frankincense on this time. And what do you do with it? Ve'viyah el bnei Aaron HaKohanim. You take it to the bnei Aaron, to the Kohanim. V'kamatz misham lo kumtso. And what happens is they take a little bit, a certain scoop out of it. Misalta or mishmana, from the solid, from the flour, and from the oil. Al kol levanota, and on the aspects of the levana. The kira kohen eskarata mizbecha, and it's bring out an azkarata. An azkarata, what does it mean azkarata? Something that is reminded, something that's remembered. HaMizbech on the Mizbech, Ishereach Nichoach LaHashem. It's a fire offering that is a reach nichoach. It's a pleasant smell before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rashi says, what's azkarata? HaKometz ha'oleh legvoa hu zikaron ha'mincha, shebo nizkar be'aleh latoiva lenachas ruach. That the kometz, this small amount that's brought of the flour, is brought up on high, which is a zikaron ha'mincha. It's a representative of the mincha. It just represents the whole offering, which is all the flour. Shebo nizkar ba'aleh, that through the small amount that is brought up, nizkar ba'aleh, the toiva lenachas ruach, that the one who brought this, the owner of this korban, is remembered la toiva or lenachas ruach, for good and for nachas ruach. And we understand nachas ruach is just something pleasant. And the balance of the korban that wasn't brought up on the mizbeach is given where? L'Aaron u'levanav. It's given over to Aaron and his children. Kodesh Kedoshim me'Esher Adonai. It's Kodesh Kedoshim. It's holy. It's special. It's important. It's something very important. The Emek Davar, the Netziv, wants to understand. What is it that we're trying to do this? What is this concept of the kamatz misham? So he says that it seems to be the kamatz misham means he takes a small measurement. He says lefi loshen hamikra haya b'mashma sheba'alim komtzim etzel hakohanim. It seems to be that the kamatz misham, that he himself takes it, that the owner of the korban does the mitzvah, does the scoop. U'mitzvah kahina eno ela haktorah. And the mitzvah of the kahuna is just to do the actual offering. Aval b'emet ein okay. He says that's not the way it works. Why? Because we understand that the kohen is the one who brings who does the kmitza, who does the scooping. He does everything. Because in actual fact, that he says what happens is the minute it's designated for a korban, then the kohanim are able to take the kmitza, are able to take that scoop without even the baalim knowing. He says because once it's handed over to the kohanim, the baalim, the owner of that korban, right? It's as if he's doing it himself, because the kohen is just an extension of him. And so therefore, even though it seems to imply that he's doing it, it's not him. It's the kohanim that are doing it. What is this concept of the azkarata? We said that it comes as a remembrance, as a reminder of the Baal, that everything is there, that it's just the way Rashi explained, that it's only just it's just a portion of the korban that is brought up, where the whole korban isn't brought up. So it comes along the Netziv, and he says something which I think we can really learn from. He says the concept of askara is on the levona, is actually on the frankincense. It's not on the flour, and it's not on the oil. It's on the frankincense itself. What is the person? What is the purpose? The purpose of the levona is simply to give a pleasant odor, a pleasant fragrance. And when there's a pleasant odor, when there's a pleasant fragrance that is coming off the korban, it's maskir latov. It is a reminder to make something that is only good, right? Which is different from the emurim of the korban. The emurim are all the different like limbs and what have you of the korbanot. They're not there. They're not there as a something for the smell, but rather just to come up completely. So what is the thing? What is the askarot that are supposed to be having here with the mincha? The whole purpose of the askarot, things that are remembrance, says the Netziv, you have to look at the rest of the psukim. And within all the psukim, it speaks about other aspects of askarot, other types of remembrances that the Torah wants us to remember, all in the format of the mincha, and in actual fact, there are three. So if we look at the psukim, we can see the first one is the azkarata that we mentioned earlier on. The second one, which we'll see, is when you bring the next type of korban mincha, which is the korban marcheshet. So the korban marcheshet is a different kind of one, because the korban marcheshet, sorry, one second. The korban marcheshet is another type of mincha, and that is when it's put in a marcheshet, is a pan. It's like where you cook it. I brought the English so it's easier to see. So the korban marcheshet also has solet b'shemen. It has the flour with the oil. You bring it up, and that its remembrance. This is the second remembrance, which is the korban marcheshet, the one that's made in the pan. Then it carries on with the other type of korban mincha, the korban mincha. That the other korban, there's another korban which also mentions the word azkarata. And since it all mentions the word, the minchat bikurim. The minchat bikurim is a special type of first fruit mincha, and that's also viktir hakohen et azkarata. It's also the azkarata. So the Netziv wants to understand what is this concept of the azkarata that we need to keep mentioning. What is this remembrance that is so important? So let's look at this Netziv, because it's beautiful. So the Netziv says we've got these three azkarot, and all these azkarot says the following: Lefi devareinu, according to what we understand, the mincha is coming bishvil hashchatat hamidot al yedei echad michole hamarot. He says the reason why we bring a mincha is because we understand that a person's character traits get impacted on different things. And when the person's character trait gets impacted from different things, then we have to also bring a korban to try and assist in undoing the damage to the character trait. Hacholi atzma ba machmat avera shemevi lidei yerakun omara shechoira. Says the choli, the actual illness that comes from of like depression, comes why? Machmat avera. Comes because we do an Aveira, because we're not connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu completely. That when we do an Aveira and we recognize that disconnect from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that brings a certain level of depression. And then when we get depressed, when we get down, when we're feeling low and disconnected, then what happens? It just gets worse and worse. It's like a slippery slope. It says, the punishment of an Aveira is an Aveira, says the Netziv. What does it mean? The problem is that the Aveira leads you to feel even worse about yourself, which leads you to do additional Aveiras. That's the way the process works. You need 3 kaporas. Firstly, the first kapora you need is for the first Aveira that was done, that led you ultimately to this feeling of negativity. Shainit, the second one, the second we need is because you need to undo the machala, the feeling of depression, the feeling of being down. That's the second kapara that you need. As David HaMelech said to Shaul, and he quotes a pasuk that when Shaul had this terrible depressed feeling, he wanted to chase over David, and because he was feeling so depressed, he was feeling so paranoid, so he wanted to run after David because he thought David was trying to rebel against him. He said to David, says to Shaul, bring up a korban mincha, and when you bring up a korban mincha, you'll feel better about yourself. How that works, I don't know, but that's the idea. The third thing, says it's not enough to just take a kapara on the fact that you did the Aveira and on the fact that you felt down about it and that led you to do things, but you got to actually do a kapara on the fact that you went continued to go down, even though it was the reason why you went down was because you weren't feeling well, nonetheless, and listen to this, if you would have stood up to those negative feelings, be misgaber over it, being strong over it, being able to overcome the depression. And we're not talking about clinical depression. We're not talking about a chemical depression. We're talking about feeling down because you've done something wrong. But we have to lift ourselves up. If you're not able to misgaber, you would have been able to overcome it. The whole purpose of the fact that you fell down was just a nisayon. Sheba davar avera leyado. It's a nisayon, it's a test. And that test is there to see whether the avera is going to come into your hands. If you don't stand up to the test that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us, nechshav la'avera, says the Netziv. It's considered like it's an avera. What a powerful idea. A powerful idea for us to understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts things on our plate, and our chas v'sholem is wishing anybody anything. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts things on our plates, and we need to be able to stand up to those things and overcome the difficulties of those things. And we all go through difficulties, be they financial, social, intellectual, emotional, spiritual. We all go through these nisyonot, all these through these different tests. But we have to be able to withstand the challenge of those nisyonos. But if we don't, nechshav la'avera, he says, it's like an avera. Because we don't understand it's given to us by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I saw the most beautiful thing from Rav Biederman. Rav Biederman's quotes, and this is an important part for us for Pesach. Rav Biederman quotes from the Mishnah, and the Mishnah in Pesachim tells us that once you've cleaned your house, ready for Pesach, you don't have to worry about an animal that may take chometz from one place, from another place which hasn't been cleaned, to your place which has been cleaned. And the reason why you don't have to worry about it is because if you're going to worry about that, you're going to worry about what about if it goes from my house to another house, from this house to another house, and from there to the city, and from the city to the whole country. And as the Mishnah presents, ein ledavar sof. That you can't worry about the animal bringing that chometz to you, because if you worry about bringing it to you, there's never an end to that. And says Rav Biederman, it's such a geschmacka way of understanding things. Rav Biederman says, you know what? The reason why the Mishnah says you don't worry about it, under what circumstances don't you worry about it? Because ein ledavar sof, when there is no end to your worry, don't even start worrying about it. What a learning. We worry about so much. And because we worry about so much, where there's no end to our worry. And if there's no end to our worry, to our concern, to our anxieties, then we can never get on with things. That's nechshav le'avera. That's what the Netziv is telling us. So what are we supposed to do? What we're supposed to do is do a hishtadlus. Hishtadlus means you do active things in order to try and achieve things. You know, if a person has got a business, a person needs a child or whatever that's got a shidduch, whatever the case is. So what do? Do we worry? Are we concerned? Does it fill our mind with negative thoughts all the time? Or, says Rabbi Biederman, just do the ishtadlus. Put everything into play and leave it in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because if you don't do that, ein ledavar sof. There's no end to that worry. And that worry is the thing that pulls us down. That worry is the thing that disempowers us to connect profoundly with the Ribono Shel Olam. And that's what we have to do. And so that we're seeing that this concept of the Korban Minchah is one of the aspects of the Korban. It comes to be as a kapora, as an atonement over three things. The first thing is that first avera that we do that causes us to disconnect. At that point in time, we need to say, Ivdat Hashem b'simcha. We got to serve Hashem with joy. We have to get out of that sense of guilt and move on. Guilt, whilst it's a Jewish thing, right? It's not really a Jewish thing. You can't live with guilt. You bring a korban ashram and you move on. You bring the guilt offering, you move on. We say sorry and we move on, and that's something we've got to learn for ourselves collectively as a nation. We know we live with so much guilt. You know, the traditional guilt that we have. You know, the Jewish mother's guilt that we all feel. But we've got to move out of that, because that guilt pulls us down, and that pulling us down already is an avera. But the Aveira that comes from the Aveira of feeling down because of the guilt of disconnection is even a bigger thing, because that leads us to do things that we don't need to do because we feel so disconnected. And so we need to be able to bring that all up, because even just not being able to overcome that challenge, says the Netziv, okay, is nechshav l'kaveira. Comes along the Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. And Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says something magnificent. He says we need to understand that the Korban Minchah that we've spoken about, all of them, all 5 of them, which we haven't gone into the detail of them, but all 5 of them all have a similar form. They're just baked in different ways. The one way it's just pure flour, the other one is baked, the other one is cooked, the other one's roasted, on all different ways that they're brought. But he says they all have the same form. It's flour together with oil, together with frankincense. Flour, that's solet, mincha, and levana. Flour, oil, frankincense. Why do you need to have all of those things? So he says, let's understand very simply. What is flour? Rashi told us that flour is from wheat. Wheat is the foundation of bread. Wheat is the staple of our diet. I saw the most fascinating thing that, the wheat that we have is all it's modified in some way, not necessarily GMO in the normative sense, but it's modified. It's not the original wheat. But in Yerushalayim, in the early 1900s, when they arrived in Yerushalayim, they found biblical wheat. Biblical wheat is not the wheat that we have. It actually forms the basis of all of our wheat because it's much more hardy. But it's fascinating to see that it's just different. It's a different thing. So when we speak about wheat, we're talking about biblical wheat. We're talking about something that's really healthy. It's not refined. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's rich. It gives us nutrients that we need. That is the solet. That is the thing. Why? What does that represent? It says Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, we know it says ein kemach, ein Torah. If you don't have kemach, you don't have Torah. If you don't have wheat, you don't have flour, you don't have the Torah, meaning that kemach is the machaya. It's the thing that gives us life. It's the thing that our staple food. And that represents all of our physical things that we have, that are upon which our lives are dependent. So it's very much more the staples, the basics that we have. And so therefore, when we understand that we bring a Korban Minchah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's showing our subjugation of ourselves and that the basics that we have to the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What about shemen? Shemen is like, we speak about shamein, which is fat, or so shamein is the extras. It's the extras, not the basic needs that we have, but it's the ashirut, it's the wealth, it's the stuff that's added to the simple lives that we live. That also has to be brought up as a korban in order for us to be machnia, to subjugate ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And finally, the levona. What's the birth of the levona? The levona is the thing that brings us the nice smell. It's something that's really extra. It's sviut haratzon. It's the satiation of what we like, of our will. And he asks, says Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, he says that you're not, it's not just because you have the wherewithal doesn't mean you have a pleasant, beautiful life. The beauty, the enjoyment of the wealth is a bracha in and of itself. Because it can be that a person has got every single thing, and we all know these type of people, has got every single thing they could possibly need, and still they're not happy. So happiness and enjoyment of that which you have are independent from each other. And that's why it says that the soilet has to be part of that. The levona, that the frankincense has to be part of the korban, but not the whole korban, because it's not about total enjoyment, but it's about seeing the korban of the solet, of the wheat, filled with the oil, filled with the extras that really give our lives meaning. But that has to have also the levona, the total enjoyment of the experience. It can't just be something that we have and we don't recognize where it comes from. So it comes along of Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, and he continues and he says, just by the way, why does it say the nefesh ki takriv? Why does it mention the nefesh? And all the others we saw from Rashi, that Rashi said that it says that the nefesh is the poor person. But he says, why nefesh? Magbila et minchat hanadava el hayachid haboded. He says this because it specifies that this type of nadava, this type of korban that is brought as a free offering, specifically speaks about what? The individual. Why the individual? Because the Gemara in Menachos tells us, "Hakol ba'in b'shutfus," right? Everyone is able to come b'shutfus, is able to come in partnership, except the mincha, because that says nefesh. Kol sha'ara korbanot, all the other korbanot, afilu yona achad, even if you bring one dav, yocholim shnayim or yosel akrivim b'shutfus, everybody they can all come in shutfus in partnership. Hayotze min haklal hayachidi mincha, except for the korban mincha, because there it says nefesh. HaKorbanot haba'im min achai mesamlim et ha'adam shemutar alav lemalei tafkid. That the ones that come from live animals, those represent a human being, that a human being has got a tafkid in this world, he's got a role in this world. And so what the korban does is it connects the nefesh, the tafkid, together with the body. But the reality is that our tafkidim are connected to one another. Our goals, our requirements, our role in this world is connected to people around us. Because everybody is connected to one another. I'm able to assist you to fulfill your tafkid, and you can assist me. You can never do it on your own. That's what it means. Everybody has to breathe the same air. And we have to breathe the same air. We got to try be one body. We've got to try be one spirit. We've got to try and do things as one nation. And that's why you can have hundreds of people on one little korban, because that korban represents each person's life force, and every person's life force is connected to one another. But the mincha is different, because the mincha comes for something else. It doesn't represent the person. What the mincha represents is not the person himself, but the means whereby he is able to sustain himself, the physical needs, and the happiness with that which we have got. And that's what it says, Shekain Hashem mesafek chol yachid v'yachid et hatznaim hanitzrachim lekiyumo. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives each one of us the things that we need, physical needs and emotional needs, that each one of us needs for ourselves. And in that way, when it comes to our other needs, to our specific emotional needs, specific physical needs, specific spiritual needs, each one is standing on our own. What this parsha really reveals, says Rosh Shimshon Hirsch, is the concept of hashgacha pratit. Because ein shnayim mitnadvim isaron echad. Two people can't bring up one measure of wheat. Mishum shekol adam va'adam makabel es asaron hamiyuchad lo me'et Hashem. Each person gets their own pekel. Each person gets their own wealth. Each person gets their own bread. It gets their own wheat. Gets their own flour. Everybody got their own from Hashem. Rayon ze bali de bitui balacha noheget bikolam menachot. And this manifests itself, and this will end on the one concept that comes out in halakha. Yesh li zaher shelo lifchot mishir hamincha. You've got to make sure when you bring a korban mincha that you don't leave anything out. It's got to be exact. Im chaser mina isaron afilu koshu hamincha psula. Because if you leave even a small amount of the isaron, that's the measurement of the mincha is possible. The mincha doesn't work. V'inei isaron hu asirus ha'efa, and the isaron is a tenth of an efa. Hamincha hi efa kamo hamina na'asaf omer legolgolet, because it's an omer legolgolet. It's an amount for each person. But Torah omer ha'omer asiris ha'efa. The omer is an asiris ha'efa, and if the omer is asiris ha'efa, it's the same as the as this amount. Haman megale af et hashkachat Hashem meyacheset l'chol nefesh b'vnei atzma. Because we understand that that everybody is an individual person that has to bring their own thing that represents their life before the Ribono Shel Olam. And so therefore, we have to understand, she'af hayom halechem hamachal kaleinu Eino ela man. And when it comes to the man, we spoke about the man, I just mentioned it earlier. When it speaks about the man, everybody's got to go their own measurement. Why? Because we need to understand that the lechem that sustains me even today is the man. What is the man? It's that isaron, it's that small amount, that tenth of an ephah, which is the amount of the amount that I have to bring to the Korban Minchah. That's the thing that shows me my individuality before the Ribbon Shloim. Hashem gives me everything I want exactly the same as He gave the Jewish people, the man in the desert. And when He does that, we can understand that the Korban says nefesh, that the Torah says nefesh, referring to the Korban Mincha, because I bring an individual Korban. Nobody else is involved in that. I bring it. I bring it because I understand that the way I engage with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way I feel if I do Chas v'Shalom and Aveira, if I feel down, it's my job to lift myself up. Oh, I understand I've got to join destiny, but it's my job to lift myself up. I can't always rely on others to inspire me and to motivate me. I've got to do that myself because if I can't stand up to those tests on my own, through my own inner strength, that itself is considered to be an Aveira. And that's why it says, when we say the Shema, it says Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu v'ahavta. V'ahavta speaks about is talking about the individual. B'chol mo'odecha. Right? That's what it speaks about in that first paragraph of the Shema. But in the second paragraph of the Shema, it says, V'haya im shamoa. If you will listen, that's talking not about me as an individual, it's talking to the whole nation. So therefore it says, B'chol levavcha, v'chol nafshecha. Sorry, B'chol levavchem, v'chol nafshechem. It doesn't say mo'odechem. You know why? Because mo'odechem is the things that belong to you. The things that belong to you are yours individually. They're not collective. And those things that belong to you individually, you have to deal with themselves in your service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so therefore we've seen that as we bring the Korban Mincha, we bring ourselves towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We remove ourselves from a sense of depression, trying to come before Hashem, trying to remove the negativity. And in removing the negativity, we feel a sense of Sfias HaRatzon, of engagement, of enjoyment with the things that we do have as an individual, but within the destiny of the community. Have a wonderful day, everybody. God bless you all.